Hi everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Atomic Ambition, the podcast. And today we are talking about a book called Mastery. Now let me get you the full title of this book. Mastery, the keys to success and long-term fulfillment. That's the title of the book. It's by a guy called George Leonard. And it's a book I read for the very first time. I think it was around about in October or November of last year. So why have I chosen this book? Well, honestly, this book has given me one very valuable thing that for me, in terms of helping me improve how I learn and how I improve myself. And for me, it's all about the learning plateau. That's the one thing I've taken from this book. The book is a very comprehensive book about learning, and I've got some notes. It is quite a detailed book, so I've actually written a few things down that I want to perhaps sort of mention and talk about. So this book, for me, the focus of this book, focus of mastery, I think what George Leonard wants us to think about or understand is that to master something, you have to care about the outcome. If you really want to be a master of something, you have to care. It can't just be something that you're just dabbling with, and the dabbler is one of the characters he talks about. He also talks about the obsessive person and the hacker. But a master has to really care about the outcome of something. That's one thing that I've particularly enjoyed learning or reading about in that book. The master's journey, if you read this book, it's a very interesting idea, very interesting concept. One of the things that George Leonard sort of speaks about, and he talks about why people fail to learn or to master something, and it's a fairly new phenomenon, perhaps, I think, but it's all about instant gratification. Everybody wanting everything instantly. You try and learn a new thing, and you want to learn and master it within a matter of hours rather than a matter of years. People love instant gratification. I love instant gratification. I want things to happen quickly, but they never do. Yeah. So that's where the plateau comes in. Learn to love the plateau. If you know anything about learning, most people might sort of draw learning as a sort of a diagonal, you start here and you learn and you improve and you get better and better and better and better and better. But the reality is usually very different. We don't follow a linear line. What we tend to do is take steps in our learning. And when you take a step, you sort of reach this level where you are no longer improving. Now, I have experience of this from learning languages, learning Italian, French, German, and Spanish. You kind of, at the very beginning, everything is new, and you've taken as much information as you can, and that's your first step. But eventually, you have to stop learning and consolidating what you have learnt. When you start any new thing, everything is new. Yeah, everything is something new and exciting, and you are very enthused to consolidate, move to the next step, consolidate, move to the next step, consolidate, move to the next step. But eventually, you get to the stage where you have so much information. The consolidation phase can take a longer period of time. It's not instant. There's no instant gratification. Yeah, and what George Leonard wants you to do is learn to love this plateau, the plateau of learning. The plateau of learning is where you should be consolidating your previous learning, using your previous learning, but also preparing yourself for the next stage of learning. Okay, and that's really the important thing. That's where the plateau that George Leonard describes is different from other learning plateaus. Most people talk about the learning plateau. Well, eventually you'll get to just keep practicing. Eventually the plateau will end and you'll learn something. George Leonard wants you to love the plateau because he wants you to love the plateau because that is where you start preparing for your next step or your next stage. You're going to consolidate your learning, you're going to practice, and you're going to find out where you need to improve. You're going to make mistakes, and that is preparing you for the next stage in your learning. That has changed how I think about and how I want to learn things. I want to, instead of the instant gratification, what I want now is a small chunk of information which I can devour. Let's say, devour. It's a great word. I want to devour that information on my plateau, so that I can prepare myself for my next stage of development. And it's a great idea. I think if we all to change the way we think about learning, then it would make learning. I mean, why don't they teach this stuff in schools? That's I suppose what I want to say, because plateaus are a common occurrence in any form of learning. A lot of people seem to think that a plateau is there because you're not challenged in your learning. I kind of disagree with that now. I don't think it's because there's a lack of challenge in your learning. I think it's because people want instant gratification. Even kids at school want instant gratification now. As adults, instant gratification is, it's ingrained into us. I could be wrong. I don't know. The world seems to be based on instant gratification, which is not really how we as humans, how we learn. Okay. Learn to love the plateau, the learning plateau. Buy the book, Mastery: The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment by George Leonard. It's a huge book. There's a lot to take in about the master's journey. But the one thing that I have taken away, and the one thing that I want you to take away from this podcast, is learn to love the plateau. The plateau is where you can relax. You don't have to learn anything new. Just use and consolidate and prepare for your next stage of learning. The plateau can be a day, it can be a week, it might even be a month. Doesn't matter. Learn to enjoy and embrace that time where you are just consolidating and preparing yourself for the next stage. Okay, so thank you everyone for taking the time to listen, watch this podcast. The next episode, next week, we're going to be talking about this book. We're going to talk about this book, The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. And the one thing that I'm taking away from this book, which I'll share with you next week, is failure is a good thing. See you next week.